So thanks for joining. So I'll just quickly share my screen. So last time what we discussed was a quick introduction to Power Query, right? So this is the front end of Power BI, and as you go back and click on this transform data, this is called as Power Query. Okay, so front end, sometimes in Power BI context people call this as a report builder, and this is Power Query. I hope you're able to see my screen and hear me okay. Hello. Yeah, okay, perfect. So as you go to Power Query, okay, the every table that you import is called as query. Okay, and you can import data from here, right? So just like in the front end you can pull data, you can pull data from here as well. It This recent sources tell you which are the recent data sources that you have pulled. Enter data is manually copy pasting data. Again, data source settings, so let's say your Excel file source has changed, then you can change the source from over here. uh, Similarly, like if a data source is, let's say, a Snowflake schema or dev to prod, you can change that from here as well. The next thing is manage parameters. So parameter is something that will take as we'll go ahead. The refresh preview, so refresh preview means get the latest data for me. So let's say my Excel file or the database is updated, then I can click on this refresh preview, and then this people that I have selected for now, it will get refreshed. But if I say refresh all the queries, like all the tables that I've imported, will get refreshed. Okay, so as it says, the preview may be 7 days old. So because last time we pulled data was from last class, so that's why. So if I say refresh, now it has taken the latest data set over here. The next thing is properties. So whenever we say properties, it tells us what is the name of the table that we have imported. If you want to change the name to anything else, we can change that. And it tells you enable load to report and include in report refresh. So enable load to report means that whatever we are doing over here should come back to front end, right? So let's say I don't want this query to come in front end. I'll just deselect this. Okay, and it won't come in the front end. But if I select and I don't want this to include in report refresh, I can just select. So report refresh means, so enable load means whatever you don't want to come into front end, right? And if I deselect this, like whenever we'll refresh the entire report, this table will not be included in the report refresh. Okay, so that is the entire difference between these two factors. So there could be a case where you are pulling a data and you don't want that data to be included into report refresh, right? Or you don't want it to be, come in front end as a for building reports. You just want it some for some data related activities, nothing else. So those are the two properties associated with every table that we are importing. And as I said, that every table that you import, it Power BI calls it a query. Okay, and then next is advanced editor, as we discussed last time. So it tells us what we have done so far while doing the data. So it, even though we don't have to go through this code entirely, like we never write this code, but you can always tweak it. Like let's say my Excel file is refreshed, either I can do go to data source setting and change the path, or I can change path directly from here, right? So it tells me that the source of my data is coming through this path. Next, it is telling me that from that source, is there any tab that I'm specifically using, and then change type. So I have changed types, so that's why it appears over here. And whatever was my last activity, it it appears over here. So that is how the construct of M code. This is called as M code or mashup language. As a Power BI expert or Power BI professional, you are never expected to write this language, but it is imperative that you should have a high level understanding of what this M code is about. So even if you go through, let's say you apply 10 steps over here, you can just quickly take a glance, and looking at this code, you'll be able to come to some sort of conclusion that, okay, what are all activities that I have done for this report. Then the other option that comes is manage, which has three options. So if I say delete, this query will get deleted, people query, right? If I say duplicate, it generates another copy, right? And again, if I say reference, it creates another copy. But the source of this, so if you go to advanced editor, the source is people, right? So it is referencing this query, right? So let's say if I apply some sort of transformations, right? So I'll give you another example. So this is my orders table, right? So in this orders table, let's say I remove this one column, right? So I've removed this one column. Now there are other columns remaining. Just like that, you apply any sort of transformation to this data set, and then you say reference. Okay. Now, whatever was my last activity on this table, after that I clicked on reference. So it will take that very activity as a input, and then it will create a new query for us, right? So there is, if you go over here, in the view tab, you see this query dependencies. Okay, so this query dependencies tell you that from where you are fetching data and how the queries are interrelated to each other, right? So if you click on this query dependencies, it tells you that this people that you have used has a reference, and orders that you have used has a reference, right? I clicked it, I did it for one more time for testing purposes. So if you see this orders 3 or orders 4 that we have created, it is referencing to the orders table, orders query that we have pulled originally, right? But just like that, when we do duplicate, it directly connects to the data source. Any questions here, or is it clear? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. So let's say if I remove this order date column and I go back here, right? So yeah, let's, as you can see, it is directly linked to the source table. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the reference, actually, the application of reference is something which is just a lot, it connected to that query itself. Okay. So I cannot interconnect them, because if you see, over here, the people, orders, and return, these three are coming originally from this, right? So even return has nothing to do with orders, it is directly pulling data from my data source, right? So I cannot interrelate them. But whenever I create a reference, from here a reference new is created over here, a new query is generated which is linking to this table, but I cannot create any link between these two. uh, yeah. No, that is the reference, actually is a part of the set of processes, right? So you pull a data, you remove some columns, you apply some transformations, and then you doing a reference. So that is like a, you are creating a copy of the exact replica of the processes. Whereas the joining of the tables, that is a different application that we use in merge or building relationships. Yeah, so the reference is we use generally when we want to create a copy of a data set, right? Um for some purposes, but I have not used reference as much, because what happens is that whatever transformations that you apply are also get replicated. So let's say if I want to keep a backup of my data set, right? In that case, what I'll do, do a duplicate, right? So even though I do anything over here, my duplicate orders is just intact. It is not having any issues there. So that can, so we use duplicate more. Reference is something that I have not come across any situation where, I'm using a reference, because whatever I'm doing over here will also appear over here. So I have not used, but let me find a use case on that, and I'll share it with you. Okay, so that those are all options, duplicate and reference. Okay, then yes. Hmm. 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 No, 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 no. So for joining two tables, there are two options for you. One is this merge queries, like you can merge two tables together based on the common columns. Or the other option that you have is you go to front end and you build a relationship between them here. So those are the two options you have while connecting two tables together. Yeah. So if you see this orders table, you now we have seen these part, right? We have seen this part. Close and apply will come to that. So let's say choose columns, right? So I can choose columns based on whichever I want, right? So right now I pulled all the columns, but let's say I just want to keep these three columns or four columns, five columns. So only five columns are selected. Rest everything we have removed, right? So let's say if I want to go back to the earlier stage, right? So whatever transformations that you apply appear over here. So I select, I remove this, or I close this, and I have the data for my earlier stages, right? Now again, if I go and select choose columns, and let's say I just click three, four, right? And now I have these only four columns. Even if I go to this previous option, it tells me what was my data set, right? Yes, exactly. So now if you close and apply, okay, let's see for orders table. And I go to this data tab for orders table. So if you see, only four columns are selected, right? We whatever we have chosen. So again, so this Power Query enable us to apply transformations in terms of all the ETL related activities that you want to do, right? So if I again close this and have this entire data set, and now if I again do close and apply, let's see how the orders table look like. So I again have all the data set, right? So again, go back to Power Query, this close and apply. Okay, so it is good practice that whatever you do, you always select close and apply. So whatever changes that you have done will get reflected in the front end, right? uh, Whenever you make any changes, just select close and apply and go back to front end. So that is the entire process. So this is what we can do or achieve with choose columns, right? So either if you just want to remove one specific column, you can right click and remove this column. Okay, and as you see, whenever you right click, you see lot of options, right? So all these options that you are seeing over here will cover in this categories, okay, in these options that we have. Okay, so now even, yeah, please go ahead. Okay, so when I say that properties, right, when I say I don't want enable load, okay, this entire orders table will not reflect in the front end. Okay, yeah, and when I say like select only specific columns, only those columns will either removed or appear based on our selections. Okay, so now you know how choose column works, right? So you can select and you can take them. Now this looks redundant for now because we can manually select or remove, but when you have a large chunk of columns, like let's say 500 columns, then it becomes imperative that you use choose columns and select columns that you need. The next is go to column, right? So let's say I directly want to jump on sales. Say okay, it helps me jump directly to sales rather than using this bar over here. Okay, similarly you have remove columns. So I go to this remove column. So this column, if I select on remove, it will remove sales column and remove other columns. So if I select these four columns, one, two, three, four, right, and say remove other columns, it removes all the other columns, right? So multiple ways of doing same things, right? It's up to you. And then again, if you don't want this process, like we can just remove other columns, right? And yeah, so we just saw choose columns and remove columns. Just like that, we have keep rows and remove rows. So keep top rows. So let's say if I want to just keep 100 rows, it will just automatically filter out anything number of rows by which is more than 100, right? So row id up to 100 only I have, everything else is just filtered out. Keep bottom rows. So let's say I want to keep bottom 100 rows, right? So it has just taken last 100 rows. Again, deselect this. Keep range of rows. So let's say if I want to start from row 5 till row 15, okay, it just keeps that specific data. Okay, now you must be thinking, what is the application for this? So let's say you are dealing with invoices data, okay, and this invoices data that you are dealing with starts from this, okay, invoice number, okay, and then customer name, sales, and profit, right? So let's say then every time you are dealing with an Excel spreadsheet where there is some sort of redundant columns present over here, and your actual data starts from here, right? So in this case, what you can do is whenever you are pulling this Excel spreadsheet, you can just say remove top 6 rows, right? So in that way, you have your data set ready for the consumption. Okay. So this is one application of, yeah. Keep, yeah, remove, yeah, remove top rows, yeah. Yes. So I'll quickly we'll just quickly try it, right? So let's say 1 2 3 customer A, B, C, right? And then now I will import data like this. Okay, enter data. Now first of all, I don't need these 2 rows, so I'll remove these, right? And now I don't want these 5 rows, right? So I go to remove rows, and say remove top rows, and I say 5. Okay. Now what we see is that the first row indicates the header name, right? So you have this option, use first row as headers. Just select that, and you have your data set ready. And like this is one application uh, of using remove rows. I was explaining keep rows, but I gave you the scenario of remove rows. But you, I hope you get my point that this is one of the application that we use. And if you want to keep duplicates or keep errors, it will show you over here, right? So let's say if there is any errors or any empty values, it will appear over here. We'll come to this part later. Okay, but as you can see, this is one of the applications. Then the remove rows is again what we see: remove top rows, remove bottom rows, remove alternate rows, remove duplicates, blank, or if let's say if you have any blanks over here or any errors, you can just simply remove blank rows or remove errors. But be mindful that let's say this row has the error, and if you say remove errors, the entire column will get removed, right? So rather what you can do is you can deal with errors. There is a way we can do that, we'll come to that. But if you say simply say remove errors, it will automatically delete the entire row. Okay, perfect. So next is, after keep rows and remove rows, is sorting. So you can sort in the ascending or the descending. So this sorts in ascending order, and this button that we have is sort in the descending order. The next is split columns. So split column means that how can we split the column? So let's say by delimiter. So a delimiter could be a space, colon, comma, is equal sign, space or tab. Or is there any custom character that we want to include, right? So let's say in this case we have a space, so I want to split this customer name into these two different columns. So what I'll say by delimiter. Okay, and I'll say leftmost, okay, by space, and I say okay. So my customer and my name is split by the space attribute. Okay, just like that, you can use any special character as a delimiter, or any other character that you feel which is present over here. right? Now, what is this leftmost and rightmost? So leftmost is that any space which appears first in this column is leftmost, or any space that comes first from the right side of this column, right? Or let's say there are multiple spaces in a column and we want to split every one of them. So let's say there are four spaces. Just a moment, sorry. So let's say there are four spaces. Sorry, just give me 1 minute. Okay. So if there are, can you hear me, right? You can hear me? Okay, perfect. So let's say there are four spaces in a column and we want to create a split column for each occurrence of that delimiter. We can select that and we can get four splits of the column. So this is how you can split the columns. Okay. What I would request is go ahead and try this split columns with every possible delimiter that there is. Okay, you can just take all of these, put into Excel, enter data, add them, and just try to split them using this split column, right? The next is by number of characters. Okay, again we have these three split option: once, far left, or far right, or repeatedly. So let's say I want to do it just for once. Okay, and by number of characters, which is four. So it takes first four characters and then the rest into other, right? But what if I do repeatedly? I say number of characters by 4 and I want to do it repeatedly. So as you see, it has created a factor of 4 and it has split the columns into four different columns by every four characters, right? And then by positions. So I can say for every second and every fourth position, split the column. So again, it has split, right? So I would request try all these options and let me know what you think. The other is, let's say I'll go here and I say split column and I say lowercase to uppercase, right? Split column by lowercase to uppercase. Yeah, could be. Let's see. Yeah, we have here few lower cases. So lowercase to uppercase. So whenever Duratec, whenever lowercase to uppercase transition happened within a word, it is splitting that column whenever that lowercase to uppercase is happening, right? So try all these options by digit to non-digit, by uppercase to lowercase, and let me know what you think. The next is we change the data type, right? So let's say I want to change the data type of this row ID to, let's say, a text. I can do that. So whenever you are trying to change the data type, you have two options in front of you. One is changing over here. The other one is you can change from here. You go to this column, select on any of the column, and you can change the data type. But I would always recommend that whenever you want to change a data type, you change it from here. So this is the backend of Power BI. So whenever you are pushing data to Power BI, it should be changed from here. Okay. The next, yeah, please. Yeah, yeah. So this is the logical data type operator, right? So let's say we have true and false, right? So whenever we are saying true and false, it is a possibility that the true and false appears in the text format. So the logical operator is sometimes that you have, let's say, flags in your data set which says true or false, right? Shipment delay, true and false. So either we can change it from text to a logical operator which is true and false, and binary means 0 and 1. So if your data set is in the 0 and 1 format, okay, and ideally that's a binary data set, but it is tagged as by default decimal or whole number, then you can change it from whole number or decimal to binary data format. Okay, then you have lot of data types over here. Sometimes your date comes into time format, right? Or just date and time, both date and time format. Then you can change it to that specific type. Let me find some case where we are using date, time, and time zone, and I'll show you that kind of data type. Right now we don't have here. Okay, then let's say yes. Hmm. 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 Yes. Right, right. So yeah, yes, yes. So let's say where is the table, right? Okay, yeah, fine. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So now if I add this to the table, right? So right now we don't have nulls, but even if let's say you have nulls, right? Right now it has taken empty, but let's say if you have nulls, you can replace values, okay? And then you can replace nulls with any other value, zeros or blanks you want to replace it with. So this replace, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so with replace, you can replace the blanks with zero. So let's say if I please replace with blank with zero. So whenever there is a blank, it will change it to zero. But whenever we say replace, right, in the entire column, whenever there is a, it won't just change at one place, it will change at the entire column. Right. Yes, yes, right, right, right. Yes, yes. Okay. Right, right, right. Something like this. Okay. So I take this data. So there are some nulls, right? So what I can do is I replace this values of null. So it automatically picked null, right? And I replaced with zero. Okay, right? So this is how you can deal with null values. And if say you want to replace this blank, then again you have to do the same thing. Replace value find blank with 0 or na, because it's a customer name. So that's how you can do it. Does that answer your question, Shripa? Right. It- yeah, changed it to null. Null. Yeah, 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 yeah. It is. Uh, so yeah, so this is how you can use replace values, data type, right? Remember that we always use this data type, right? There would be some scenarios where your header is in the first row, right? Returned and order ID. So in this data set, my header is in the first row. So use first row as headers. And if you drop down, use headers as your first row. Okay. So I would say use first row as headers, right? And if I select the other option, then again headers will appear as first row, which I don't want. So use first row as headers to get the first row as headers. Cool. So we have seen these many options, right? The next is merge, append, and combine files, right? So I will, for now, I will not cover this, and I'll cover this in the later part, because for that I need to cover some basics of SQL. But we'll take append, okay? And this AI insights, the text analytics vision, and the Azure machine learning, this AI insights, I need to find some good data set to achieve these um, good outcomes with this. But for now, let's just focus on the append queries, right? So append means that keeping stacking two data set, one on the one top of another, which means let's say you have this data, right? And you have another data set which is coming up. So you take that and paste it over here, right? And remove the row headers, sorry, table headers. And this is how you have appended two data sets. Exactly what you can do over here. So let's say I have orders 2 and orders 3. So assuming that the both tables have similar structure, similar column names, I can say append query. So if I go to this orders 3 and I say append queries, it will ask me which table or which query to append below this orders 3 table, right? So I say I want to take, so this is the orders 3 current. I'll say orders 4. I want this orders 4 to be appended below orders 3. So it has appended below the orders, right? If I want to say append queries as new, which means that a new query will get generated, which will not impact my ongoing or current existing tables, and it will create a new table. So let's say append queries as new, and here I say I want to append orders 3 with orders, right? And I can select multiple tables as well. So all the orders I can add, order 4 I can add, maybe I don't want this. So you can select this one, you click on add, and it gets added to the tables which you want to append, right? So for now we are appending three tables. Let's say I don't want this table, I can just quickly remove it. I want this table to be moved down or moved up, I can do that. And I say okay, new append query has formed because I had selected append queries as new, and now it has all the columns which are there in the those three tables, right? So this is how you can append things. Yes. Hmm. Hmm. Right. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, it will be. So if you go to this view and see query dependencies, do you see that I had pulled my data orders from orders I've created this orders reference, right? And now this reference is creating another reference, orders 3, which we had done, right? And this is getting appended. So if any of this thing breaks, so let's say this breaks or this breaks for any reasons, my append will get impacted. So yes, your question is very good, very valid, that all these steps will happen first in order to achieve this. So it will follow this flow. Yeah. Yes. 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 Correct. Correct. Absolutely. So if let's say if one of the rows or any columns gets removed, right? So automatically the append will appear in a same way, right? So I'm not sure if. Uh-huh. Order three. Okay. So you don't want this reference with order 2, but you want to keep it with original orders. So we have appended uh, order 3 orders and orders 4. Yeah. Right. Let's double check. Orders 3 is no, yeah, with orders 3 is reference to order 4, which is reference to orders. So you are saying you want to remove the reference between orders 4 and order 4 and orders, but not in the appended one. So no, I'm maybe I'm uh-huh, uh-huh, right, 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 right. Okay, so you want to remove the dependency in order append. Uh, I don't know. I mean, the one way you can do it is that you can duplicate your orders, right? I'll duplicate my orders table. So this again references back to the original data source, right? And then I'll append that to my append. So there is no reference to original orders table. But a good question. I really like this question. And you can change the layout in this for your understanding. Okay, always use this query dependencies for visual representation of query flow that you want to see, right? Uh, the next is merge queries, which I will take later in the upcoming classes. Yes, yes. People to Sorry, people and okay, 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 got it. So I say append queries as new, right? And I'll append people three with people two. Where is it? Yes. Mhm. Right, right, right. Okay, right, right, right. So I'll delete it for now, right? And I'll say in people three, I'll use first row as headers, right? And I'll say people two, first row as headers, right? And now we'll try to do append again. So append queries as new, people two with people three, and let's see what happens. So now it has not, it has identified that the matching columns, and then it has removed that problem. Yeah. Okay. Merge. Okay, append. Uh-huh. Two tables with different column names. Okay. Returns. Let's do people and returns. Okay. For simplicity. Yeah. Cool. So let's do append queries as new. Okay. Returns and people. So when I do that, it creates a union. So because there is no match between those two tables, it creates a union. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. 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 Yeah. Perfect. Yes, great questions. Thank you. So as we have completed this part, except merge queries, right? We'll go to transform tab. Okay. So in transform tab, you see some options over here. So you, if you are very fluent in R or Python, you can run Python script or R script to do the same activities that we are doing, but instead of doing using drag and drop options, you can do all your ETL using this run Python script or run R script. Okay. uh, the first option that you see over here is group by. So once you click on this group by, and so group by basically what it does, it groups columns, right? So let's say I'll do just basic one. So I want to say segment, right? And I'll say sum, column name would be sum. Okay. And here you see lot of operation like sum, average, median, min, max, count rows, all rows, right? So I say sum. Okay. And I say quantity. Okay. And now I say okay. So it has just grouped the data into the attribute that I have selected and the values of the column that I have selected, right? So segment and sum of quantity, right? Now, if I want to change this group by, I can simply just click on this gear box option, and I say click on advanced, right? And I can add a grouping in this, both in these attributes and along with values as well. So I say add grouping. So along with segment, I say region, right? And along with some aggregation, let's say I want to see the average, and I'll say average of profit, right? And I'll say okay. So segment, region, sum of quantity, and average of profit. So this is how you can group the data into multiple facets with multiple values, key values pairs. Okay. Very, yes. Yes, correct, correct, exactly. So let's say if you are dealing with huge data set, but you are only concerned about segment and region and profit and quantity. You don't want anything else, right? So you can simply use this group by option, take this data and push it to Power BI. So what will happen because of this? First is that your query performance will improve because you are not taking entire data set, you are just pushing the aggregated table to the dashboard, and because of that, instead of it has to process like 10,000 rows, it will just process 12 rows and 4 columns. So this is one of the good application of group by. Then you see this again, same option, use first row as headers or use headers as first row. We have seen that, right? Then you have transpose, just like Excel. So all of you must be very well versed with Excel, so you must be knowing this. So if you click on this transpose, the table shifts by 90 degrees, and it doesn't really look good in this case. But what would be a good transpose would be, let's say I have, oops, let's try and see what happens with this transpose, right? It won't look good again. So it has just shifted the table by 90 degrees. And then if I use first row as headers, it will tell me customer ABC in my columns and the values, right? So this is how you can use transfers. Maybe there is a better way, but just wanted to share. The other one that you see, okay, I'll remove this group by for now. The other one is reverse rows, right? So reverse rows means the invert table rows, like the bottom rows would be appear on the front side, or the first. So it takes the data set uh, upside down but keeps the structure intact. Then let's say if you want to count the rows, you can select on this count rows, and it tells you you have 9,994 rows, right? So again, remove this. Then again, you can change the data type from here. You can detect a data type. So you click on this and it automatically picks whole number as a data type, right? You can rename a column to any other column, right? You can rename it from here as well. Right click, okay. And as you see, you will be seeing some options that we have explored. As you right click on any column, you see that we have explored some of the options that present over here is the same as what we do right click. So we know data type, detect data type, rename, replace value we have already seen, right? The other one is fill, right? So this fill option has two, up and down. So if I go back to Excel and I add a sample data set, right? So I say country, right? And population. Say A, B, C, D, X, Z. And I have population for only first four rows. Okay. And I go and I add that. So now if you see that these three are, there are null coming in, right? So let's say I want to use the last value that appears to be, drop down to the below. So I can just say select population, fill, I say down. So whatever, let's say it has 1 2 3 4, and even if it just takes the last value in this null in this category, and just drags it to the last row of the data set. Okay, now let's see how up works, right? I'll again add this data set, right? So if I do down again, it will do 4, right? Fill, down, sorry, here need to select column and down, so it will do 4, right? But what if I do up? Then it will take 5, because it has taken the row after, like this row, and it has filled the up. So let's say if there had no values in the first 5 rows, it would have just taken this 5 and filled as 5. Okay, so this is how it can fill, right? Yes. Hmm. Right. Okay, so yes, not using this, but you can using DAX. You can create a column like that. But this is purely, I would say, uh, structure which just follows certain steps. So let's say you say average, someone would say median, right? Uh, there is no such way for now in Power Query, but in Report Builder or in the front end, you can do that using DAX. Yeah. 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 Right. 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 Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, we can do that. We can do some forecasting or projections, but not using this option. But yes, we can do that. So I guess I'll just quickly check if I am thinking it right. I'm not sure. I'll just check. So let's say you have order date and you have profit, and go to this format, forecast. Yes, you go to this forecast option that we have, and it yes. So this is how you can do the forecasting, just in case of chart. I'll explain this later, but just wanted to see if we have that functionality present. So you can do this. There is this weighted moving average time series analysis. Yes, moving average weighted time series analysis. With that, you can do that. And the more historical data that you have, more accurate your projections become. Um, right, right, right. No, absolutely, absolutely. But that is true. That is true. But along with that, we have another algorithm which is time series, which takes care of the historical data. For now, it there is another option of using time series. I'll check that. But yes, this one just takes the weighted moving average. So you're right, like the only last 10 data points would have more weighted average compared to others. So yeah, we'll explore that. Yeah, we'll explore that. But yes, you can maybe till that time you can explore these options. But we'll cross that line. But if you want to explore for your use specific use case, you can try that and read about seasonality. And then I'll explain more about seasonality. There is another topic on time series which is stationary data, right? So read about stationality and seasonality, and read about difference between seasonality and trend. Okay. uh, so and then maybe we can have some sort of use case which will use time series analysis to do some projections. Yeah. Okay, cool. So going back to, yeah, yeah, and then we have, after we do fill, we have pivot and unpivot. So let's say I have a data set. Okay, we have data set. Okay. So if I want to do a pivot, okay, I'll click on this pivot and it asks me which is the value column. So for now it's just population. I say okay. Okay. So it is just like transpose. Okay. But what it does is that it takes the rows and converts it into columns. But I'll show you some better examples, right? So let's say if I add state column, right? So I have these three columns. And now I say go home, enter data, state, country, and population. Okay. Now what I want to really do is I want to keep country in columns. Okay. So I want this to be in rows only. I want the state structure as is, but I want to change the orientation of country and population in a way that country should appear in columns. So column A, column B, column C, and the population below that, right? So I select this column which I want to pivot, go to this transform and say pivot, right? And it asks me which is the values column. So I say values is my population, right? And I say okay, right? So what it has done, it has transformed the data in a way that the state remain as is, and it has changed the country to a different columnar format and adjusted the values accordingly. So whichever column that I select gets converted to the columnar format in pivot option, right? So in this case, what we had done is that we have taken these rows and we have shifted into columns and kept the state as is. Okay. So this is called as the pivot option Power Query. Similarly, let's say I want to go back, I'll do select these options, right? And I say unpivot columns. And again, we are back to the original state. So this is how pivot and unpivot works. There would be a case, yes. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, we'll have. Will. No, 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 no. So let's say I do this copy. Okay. I copy this entire table, right? I copy it and I take it to home, enter data, right? I select these columns. This is my original data source. I go to transform and I say unpivot columns. Yeah. So in specifically for you, Shripad, there would be a lot of data set which will say January, February, March, right? And it will say quantitative easing or estimated numbers, right? Or it would also say like inflation, right? Or some other fancy financial terms that you guys use. So this, you will have this kind of data set, maybe now or maybe in future, right? Which will have these 12 months of data, and then you have attributes over here. So in that specific case, what you need to do is just select these months and unpivot them. So you have a data like this, and then Jan, Feb, March, right? And then again for this category, same Jan, Feb, March to the December, in a row specific format, which is easy for you to push it to visualizations, because you cannot visualize this data using charts, because it takes Jan as a different column, Feb as a different column. So you need to put them into one specific column using unpivot option, and then take the values and build charts out of it, right? And I'm sure you will face this. Yeah, yeah. So I've seen a lot of reports like that. So, okay. So you have pivot and unpivot, right? The other is move. So let's say I want to move this to some other part. So I say left. It is already in left. So I'll say right. So I can move the position of columns, or I say to the end or to the beginning. So small things related to data like moving of columns, right? I can convert the data into a list, sorry, column into a list. So I select one column and I say convert to list, right? So it has created a list. Okay. Once it creates a list, we can change it back to convert this list into a table. We can keep top item, bottom items, we can remove, right? Or we can just say remove duplicates, right? And we have a unique set of columns present in our data set, right? These are all things you can do using this list functions, right? um, Go to this transform tab and convert to list, and again I'll just do it for some other example. So I say convert to list. So it creates a list, exact, just takes that one column. If I want to change it to a table format, I can keep items or I can remove items. I can remove duplicates, sort. There isn't much statistical concept, but like let's say if you take a quantitative column, you can find the standard deviation, average, mean, median. But we'll take the statistics concepts as well. But yeah, those are all things you can do with list. So yeah, and then we have already seen the split column. We'll explore more, but I think we are already past the time. There is pretty much a lot of other things that we can do, like using building custom columns, building conditional columns. I'll just give you one example before our next class to chew your brain. Is, let's say I take the customer name and I take the country, right? I select these two columns and I say I go to column from examples and I say from selection, right? So it knows that I have just selected these two columns, right? So I say here is Cortez is from United States, right? And I say control enter. Now, based on these two columns, it has created a string, and it tells me that Harold Eagle is from United States, Richard Banner is from United States. So you can literally feed anything based on your understanding, and it, based on one input, it builds the like entire column based on your input. So this is one of the good features of column from examples. We'll take some more examples and we'll yeah. Yes, yes, we can do that. Yeah, yeah, we can do that. So let's say this merged. I say convert to list, and then I say remove duplicates, right? And now I can convert it into a table, and maybe I can use it for some sort of analysis that I want to do, right? So yeah, those are all things that you can do using this Power Query. So it looks simple, it looks boring in certain contexts, but it can really transform your data as we have seen today, and it can really enrich your data in a way that you can use it for good analysis, right? So yeah, those are all things I wanted to say. Going forward, we'll take this just statistical operations, add columns. We have just seen a slightest bit today, uh, and then yeah, like we'll be done with Power Query. And then in the next class, once you are done with Power Query, we'll go to the relationship part, like building relationship between two tables. So what I would recommend is try all these options. Definitely try all these options. Even try merge. We'll take merge in future classes, but explore all the options and let me know if you face any challenges. Try to play around with this advanced editor. Try to change the data source and add a new file path here. Let me know how it goes, and yeah, we'll take it from there. But yeah, I think it is you can do a lot with Power Query, and the sky is just limit. But yeah, it is purely from analytics perspective. Yes, Shripad. I don't think so, but let's try. I think it just blurs out the option of converting into list. So I select two dates option, I go to transform, and the option gets blurred out, grayed out. Yeah. So you know it. Yeah. So you can just convert it single column into list. But what you can do is you can join these two tables using any option, or using this merge option that we haven't taken it today. We'll take it. So you can merge these two columns into one column and then convert it into a list, if that makes sense. So let's say you merge that column. Yeah. And after merging, where is it? I think, yeah, here it is. And after merging, you can convert it into a list and then split based on the characters. So that way you have